Hello, everyone. For my testimony today, I'll be talking about how God has led or is leading me to play share with people in my life. Also, how God is leading me to practice one of the 5 missional habits, which are to bless 3 people each week, eat with 3 people, spend at least one period of the week listening for the Spirit's voice, spend some time learning about Christ, and lastly, journal throughout the week about the ways I've spread the love of Christ. So, when asked the first question of play sharing, I first thought about my friends, and there are some times where I felt like I did play share, but it was through text. For example, one of my friends had a situation in his family where his brother got into a heated argument with their parents, so my friend had to step in. He texted me and my other friends for advice, and he was there giving us live updates of what's happening. We were there to respond instantly and give our input, and thankfully, at the end, everything was resolved. I believe play sharing can happen through text or even through FaceTime because the essence of play sharing is to be with that person emotionally and with their struggles. A time where I remember play sharing face to face with someone is my sister. I can name many occasions where my mom was scolding my sister. Then after, my mom would call me up and tell me to hug her because after the scolding, she was usually in tears. But as of recently, my mom and sister were FaceTiming, and I hear my mom talking loudly, even though my door and her door is closed. I could still hear her, so I was in my room doing homework, but also trying to listen to the conversation. My sister was explaining to my mom how she wanted to quit her internship, but repeatedly, my mom said, "Stick through it, you got it, you can do it." And it was like this back and forth for around 30 minutes until I got out of my room, even though I haven't finished my homework yet. I got out and went over to my mom's room. I believe there I offered play sharing through the phone just by saying hi and how's everything going and encouraging her to stick through it and also try to make some jokes to lighten up the mood. Moving on to the second topic, I'll be talking about how God is leading me to practice one of the 5 missional habits, and I believe He's leading me to practice the third one. Spend at least one period of the week listening for the Spirit's voice. When I was younger, I remember every morning on the drive to church, my mom would not play music until she was on the freeway. I thought to myself at the time, why isn't she playing music? It's so boring being in the car with no music. But I realized looking back, she was praying and she was meditating and making a routine and habit to connect with God before church. I'll follow that example, but I'll try to set a time at home to meditate and try to hear the Spirit's voice, and I plan on doing this at least once a week for 20 minutes. I'll close off with one verse, Matthew 6, verse 6. But when you pray, go into your room, close the door and pray to your Father, who is unseen. Then your Father, who sees what is done in secret, will reward you. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Anica Maninang, and I'm also usually in the back helping Steven with the stream and audio. And to be honest, I'm actually super surprised that I'm back here because I thought there was an unwritten agreement that the youth would come here once a year to talk. And I think that's a sign I'm getting old, so anyways, today I'll be talking about how I've been place sharing in my own life, specifically with strangers and my friends. And really, when I was first introduced to place sharing, I thought it really encapsulated what a friendship should be. And the idea of it seems super simple, but putting it into practice is actually really hard. Place sharing, in my own definition, is making new friends, and if possible, continuing that friendship. But as I grow up, it seems to just not really go the way I want it to go. In high school and in the first 2 years of college, I found it super hard to converse and connect with my friends and classmates. I have my awkward antiques and my bubbly personality, but that's not enough to know somebody. As much as I tried to avoid it, it came to a point where I had nowhere to go but try to do my best and converse and be intentional about it. And that was a scary thought because I basically just avoided all social interactions until I knew someone was in that interaction, and I was like, this is my way in. But about a year ago, I started to volunteer at the hospital. And because of my interest of being a nurse, the supervisor put me in the nursing floor for 4 hours. Now, the task that was given to me, I could do in an hour. That was easy peasy. But for the rest of the 3 hours, I just sort of sat down and stand by, just in case the nurses need me. But to be honest, there's not much I can do. I'm a volunteer. I can't stick needles into people. I can't ask them what their symptoms are and write it down in a chart. So when I was done with that 1 hour, I usually asked if there was something I could do to help. And it was a no. So I was just sitting in a corner all by myself. And at this point, it came to where I dreaded to volunteer at the hospital because I was basically sitting down, twiddling my thumbs. But while I was talking to another volunteer who had been volunteering for about 10 years, he suggested I just talk to the nurse and to the patients to make the time pass by, because that's how he makes the time pass by. And I admire this man because 1, he's 80 years old, and 2, he has such a friendly and energetic demeanor that people actually come up to talk to him. And I'm like, I kind of want that in my own life, let people come to me. So he was kind of like a role model to me. And it was a great suggestion, except I don't know how to talk to people, especially adults. Yes, as a 21-year-old, I found adults to be intimidating. To make it more challenging, the adults that I had the option to talk to were either super busy doing their nursing duties, or they were sick laying in bed, suffering. So naturally, I opted for the latter because they couldn't escape my feeble attempts to start a conversation. Some were responsive, some asked me to go away. And I felt super awkward. What am I doing wrong? How do I start this? The best advice I'd ever gotten about talking to new people was to ask questions. Be genuinely interested in other people's life and stories. This advice was given to me by Kuya David when I was in high school. And I kind of disregarded it at the time because why would I want to talk to new people? I'm surrounded by my classmates, which I'm familiar with, my cross-country teammates, my church friends. I don't need to know much, I guess. I was just happy hanging out, and I didn't actually have to start a conversation. I could jump in when I wanted to and jump out and listen comfortably. But as my environment changed, where I was surrounded by strangers more than I was with people I'm familiar with, the advice became more relevant. And so I tried, and there have been lots of times I failed to connect with people, and I don't think I'll ever forget that. It was super awkward. But there have been times where I was successful, especially at the hospital. The wonders that you can do when you ask people about their passions, their interests, their hobbies, or something they just really want to talk about is amazing because you get to see the excitement beaming out of their body, and you learn something new. You can see the spark of connecting, of play sharing, fill the room. I had one patient who was sad about not being able to bake anymore because they lost function in their arms. And so I just sat there listening to their sad story, and I'm like, I don't know what you want me to do about that, but okay. And the advice hit me, and I was like, okay, maybe I should ask a question about baking. So I asked, what do you like to bake? And that one simple question alone helped me learn more about this person. Her eyes lit up talking about how she baked for 20 years, how she helped her children's school fundraiser by donating and baking those baked goods, how she wished she had a bakery on this corner of that street and that street, I don't remember, and what she would have made in that bakery. And I felt super proud of myself. I did my part. All I had to do was ask a question. I play shared. I listened. I connected. And then she looked back at me awkwardly, she was expecting something from me. And I was like, oh, I actually have to respond now. So what I learned here is that I have to listen to them and genuinely engage. And I have to contribute when I talk to people, when I'm place sharing with people. Shocking, I know. It took me 6 years to learn this. I just put my input and I get out. So I added, my mom likes to bake too, but it's only banana bread, and if she's feeling extra fancy, she might add a little chocolate chip in there. I don't usually join her to bake because it seems like a long process, and I'm usually busy with homework. And she responded quite excitedly about 2 recipes that she thought were easy to bake, and that was how to make garlic spread and how to add it to your garlic bread. She specifically said there were 2 different recipes, and I was like, okay. And she wanted me to write it down on my phone, and I didn't want to do that. I had finished my goal of trying to connect with somebody. This is enough. But it's not just a surface level thing. Place sharing is when you don't focus on yourself and trying to achieve your goals of connecting with people, but you have to be intentional in trying to make that friendship or connection happen. So in this one conversation, the best thing I learned was to make garlic bread spread. No, I'm just kidding. The best thing I learned from this conversation was asking questions about people's interest and responding in that interest. Play sharing to me means being present with that person, not to be occupied by how I should do things and my own goals, but sharing a space to connect as human beings. It's a simple concept, but a concept that is hard to put in practice because it requires me to do something uncomfortable, starting a conversation. And I don't like feeling uncomfortable. I felt awkward when I entered these patients' room because usually I'm there to change the gloves, but it's not expected me to go up to talk to them and be like, how was your day? What's got you laying in this bed? It's kind of awkward to be like, why are you suffering? So, and I've had other successes with asking patients how they've been doing. One man asked me to just sit next to him while he's reading his magazine because he wanted some company. Another person talked about their cats, how the cat's lineage is from a temple in Thailand. And we actually created a family tree together and which neighbors had the kittens. It was kind of crazy. And another, I got to hear what it's like to be a child in a military base in Manchuria. And the list goes on and on. These little stories make me realize that I have been place sharing the whole time, and God has been leading me to place share. Now, how do I place share with people I already know? It's not like I can go up to you guys and be like, what is making you suffer today? Well, for my friends specifically in college, I usually drag them to things that I'm already doing. I haven't been having a lot of free time lately because of the medical assisting program and because I'm being more active in the church. So in order to try to help me continue my friendships with my friends and not distance ourselves, I tell them, hey, let's go do this together or do that. And it's really surprising how it works, how I can be like, let's go to Target, and they just say yes. One time, I had to go to Costco to buy groceries for my parents, and I asked my friend Jillian from high school, not our at the Jillian, but my friend Jillian, and I asked her if she would come, and she said yes. She actually had to buy food for her house, because it was Father's Day, I believe, and she wanted to prepare a really big meal for her father to celebrate him. So I bring us to Costco, we stroll around, we talk about life. We were stuck at the berry section talking about tea and drama and who likes who. And it was really nice. And when we get to the cashier ready to pay, and I tap my card and it gets declined. And I'm like, oh no, I thought I had enough money for this. This is awkward. I invite you out and now I can't do what I was supposed to do. And the cashier is really nice and says, you can just try again. And I try again, 3 more times. And I look behind me, there's a long line. If you've ever seen Costco, there is too much pressure. And that was the worst place to get my card declined. Oh man. And Jillian, being the friend kind she is, she said that she could pay for both of us and I could pay her later. So, what did I learn here about place sharing? I can bring my friends to hang out at a grocery store, at Target, and also just in case if my card gets declined. I've invited my friends to go and walk around the neighborhood because I was in the area. I've invited friends to get vaccines with me at CVS Pharmacy or to get some vitamins, whatnot. I've also invited friends to join the fencing class, the fencing club, where I was already going to be there. So when it comes to place sharing with my established friends, I honestly just take them to places I go. And I'm sure some of us can also do that too. In the Bible, Jesus doesn't spread the word alone. He brought his friends with him, the disciples. He met strangers, place shared with them, became friends, invited them along to the journey. In my life, I can see how God has given me opportunities to place share with strangers and friends. It may not include religious conversations, but include showing God's love. And God's love shines through me by asking a simple question or asking friends to come with me to do errands. And I think that is what place sharing is. I'd like to leave you guys with a verse that has been showing up in my life a few times, especially as I become more active in the church, which is 1 Timothy 4:12. Don't let anyone look down on you because you are young, but set an example for believers in speech, in conduct, in love, in faith, and in purity. Thank you.
Hello. Hello. Thank you. It's so nice to be asked to speak on Youth Day. I have to start by simply saying thank you. Thank you to each and every one of you. What I have been learning and what I've been enduring, Marianne and I together over the last 10 months, I don't think would fit in a book. There have been so many experiences. And whereas a year ago I really didn't even have a doctor, and now I have about 17 of them, something like that. I have this long email list, and when I write, they respond. It's really interesting. In the last 10 months, I've had the experience of being on a gurney, wheeled down the hallway and into some kind of procedure or operating room. The last time was last Wednesday, this last Wednesday. And although that procedure went real quickly, Marianne went down to get a cup of tea and a snack, and by the time she came back up to the waiting area, they called to say I was done. But you know what? From my point of view, it was the same length as everything else. You go down the hall, you go here, you get in this room, you slide over onto this table, they're asking you questions, you hear the surgeon talking about what we're going to do, is it on the left or the right, da-da-da-da, right? And then finally the anesthesiologist says, I'm going to give you some oxygen. And she doesn't tell you she's also giving you some propofol through the, and that's the last thing you remember. And the next thing you know, you're at the recovery room, and each procedure is that same length. The surgery might have been 6 hours or 20 minutes. But for me, it was all the same length. That's kind of interesting for me to think about because in the last 10 months, I've had that experience 6 times. That's a lot of times. I started to count up, I wonder how many needle pokes I've had. Oh, I can't do that math. A lot. I've seen a lot of nurses, a lot of situations, had a lot of interesting things. And now I'm at a much better point. Yes, I've lost weight. I needed to lose weight, and I lost several pounds before going into surgery. Then I lost quite a few pounds as a result of the surgery. And then I got kind of a relapse, an infection and so forth, and I kept losing weight. And altogether, from my high point to my low point is a difference of 55 pounds, which is a lot of weight change. I'm proud to say that I'm gaining on that, and I've gained 10 pounds, okay? And I'm feeling a little more like Vanna, it's doing good. And now the surgeons have said, there's no reason to put any restrictions on you. You should be able to return to normal activity. So, wow. And I told them about a planned trip that we have coming up mostly because of Marianne's work, and she's been asked to go on this international trip and help out, and they asked me to go as well, and that's a wonderful blessing. But boy, that's a big deal. We're flying on the 10th of this month from Los Angeles to Athens, and we won't be coming back. We're going a couple other places because after the work, we're going to fly from Greece to France, and our sons and their spouses are going to meet us there for about 3 days, and we're going to Vive la France, right? And then we're going to Barcelona for 3 days. We're going to have tapas and wine, I think. But that's an incredible blessing and opportunity. And I shared that with my surgeons, and I said, should I just take that travel off the plan, take it off the calendar, not count on, not trying to do that. And when they heard about it, both of the surgeons said, "Oh, you need to go on that. Oh, we want to make sure you can go on that." And one of them said, "When do you leave?" And he said, "Well, let's do that procedure this week so that you have plenty of time to get ready to go. You need to go on that." And I go, that isn't what I expected. And then I told my boss, I said, "Well, I'm coming back to work," which I am tomorrow, going back to work finally for the first time since June 13th. And I told him, "Well, but I'm only going to be there for 7 days, and then I'm taking 3 weeks of vacation." And I told him what we were doing and that they wanted me to go. And he said, "Do they need anybody else?" So we feel very blessed with opportunities, and that God is just pouring into us challenges and opportunities to do things. But boy, there's been a lot of stuff to go through and to struggle through in the meantime. There were many nights when it was so hard to focus and so hard to know what to think about, and I was feeling anxious, and I had to learn that the answer to that was think about God. When we talk about place sharing, ultimately the point is he's the ultimate place sharer, isn't he? But as Anica was speaking, I was thinking, we have an opportunity to try to place share with him. Not in the sense that we can take on his role or anything, but in the sense that we can be in his company. And that we can say, "What are you thinking about right now? Father, what are you caring about in this situation?" And I've been learning too that you and I aren't just the only people who are created in God's image. Every human is. Every human. Every human. And even though Adam and Eve sinned, and we've all sinned since, that didn't take away that they're in God's image. Any more than when your kid makes a big mistake, he's no longer your son or daughter. That doesn't change. We are God's children. We are in his image. And he is with us. But when I first came into this last December and got this diagnosis, and I have to say the first thing the doctor said to me was, "I don't have good news." That's not what you want to hear your doctor say. Well, I got really serious about prayer. Now, I prayed before, but boy, did I ever pray now. And I came to the point, and my first lesson about this was, do I really believe this? Do I really step up to the faith that I've professed all these years? Do I really step into those boots and go up those steps and follow that trail? Am I really serious about it? And yeah, I said I was. So I told God, I want to give all of this to him. I want to give myself to you. I want to give my cancer to you. But of course, I had provisions as to how I wanted him to deal with that cancer, right? Don't we all do that? "Oh, God, help me with this problem by doing this and this and this, and then would you do this," right? But God said, in effect to me, "Oh, you want to give me your cancer? For me to deal with however I want to deal with it?" Oh, this is a different question. And I didn't want to go through certain procedures. And God said, "You really going to give them to me? To deal with the way I want to?" So those were commitments I had to make, and I had to take this very seriously. And what I have to say is the last 10 months have been physically, emotionally very difficult. But they've been spiritually immensely wonderful, immensely productive, immensely encouraging. I'll just tell you about one little experience along the way. I had the opportunity to audit, can you believe this, despite this, to audit a class at Grace Communion Seminary. Okay? That's a class a couple other people here have taken, and it's a good class. It's on missional living. I was so glad I was auditing because I couldn't have kept up doing all the assignments and papers and things. But I could participate, and I could kind of do some of the reading, and we read. We read this book, Positively Irritating, and I know several of you have seen that, and we're talking about that here, and we discussed it. We read a book called Overflow, which was also very interesting. You know how An optimist says the glass is half full, and a pessimist says it's half empty. A Christian says it's overflowing. How do we overflow and go in our Christian life from drudgery to delight? That was a good book. Surprise the World, which was already mentioned here today. That's a pretty interesting book, those 5 habits. And another one called Gospel Fluency. If we are spreading good news, it needs to be our native tongue. Isn't that interesting as a thought? This was a good class about missionally living. But you know what the first point was? It's not our mission. God's the one on mission. It's his mission. And he's doing it daily. And he's doing it everywhere. And I've told you about my neighbor. I said one morning, God, what are you doing? You seem so quiet. What are you doing? And I went to walk in the driveway, and my neighbor called me over. I went over, and he said, I just got this news from my doctor, and they're going to have to do this procedure. And I realized that's the exact same procedure I'd had the week before. What is God doing? Where is he at? He told me right then, I'm everywhere. I'm everywhere. So I began to be a little more open-minded through all of these things, and some of the things I've learned about place sharing. Oh, it's called other things. Sometimes we call it outgoing concern, or sometimes we call it deep empathy. But what it means is really caring and really being willing to share in that person's space, as the others have mentioned today. And I know what it doesn't mean. I learned that. Place sharing doesn't mean giving advice. It doesn't mean coming into the room with an agenda. It means coming into the room and joining where people are at, helping them from where they are. And I am so glad that God does that for each of us and meets us where we are and leads us forward from there. There have been so many wonderful examples of place sharing in the last year. There have been lots of you who sent cards, and I love and read and save each of those. There's been many, many people who sent texts and emails, and those count. They might not have postage on them, but boy, they help. They're wonderful. And there's people who've, like many of you, provided meals or gift cards for meals. Oh, do you know how difficult that has been? Just to have dinner, or just to do something special. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I think God poured out blessings through so many people. There's also been people like my friend who we used to work together 40 years ago, and then times have changed and we've gone different directions in our lives, and he attends a different church now, right? But you know what? He calls me every Saturday morning as part of his Saturday Sabbath meditation time to call in and check on me. That's really something. There have been people who just showed up. Just showed up. A friend called Marianne and said, I got something for you, and she had these pillows. I can't describe them. But they're for cancer patients and people who are in bed and so forth. And you can put one over here and hold this leg up, and one over there for your... You can do all kinds of things with them. She just wanted me to be comfortable. People have shown up with blankets, or showed up with books, or showed up with flowers. People have called and said, hey, can I come over and just chat for a while? Do you need anything done? One person calls and says, I'm at Costco, and I'm looking at this salad. I think you might enjoy it. Can I bring it to you? And is there anything else you need? I ordered a couple cases of things. What would you say that place sharing is? It's really about others. As Anica so pointed out and Gian so pointed out, it's not about yourself. It's about others. And why is that important? I'll tell you one other personal experience. One of the things you go through in healing is your emotions and the changes in your emotions. And emotions have to heal too. You've been through trauma. You've been through things that, things have changed. And my wife had been saying, be easier on yourself. You just had surgery, You just had major surgery. And then one afternoon, the surgeon himself called me. And he was trying to tell me the same message. He said it a little differently. He said, Fred, you've just been through very major surgery. Now, when your surgeon says it was very major, that created a big impact on me, and that released something emotionally. I couldn't help it. I just sat there and cried. And I began to realize, those tears, that emotion is a part of that process. And don't we all go through that from time to time where you say, I just need to cry, It's really true. But I was sitting there by myself, and then I became aware that, no, I'm not by myself. God is here. God's angels are here. They're everywhere. When we stand up here and sing, they're singing with us. They're sitting here in the room with us. They're around. They're place sharing. They're caring. They're not telling us what to do. They're helping us do what God gives us to do. The impact is huge. Just huge. Yesterday, my same neighbor came by to see me. He's facing surgery coming up on October 25th. He hasn't been out of the house for about 4 days because he just didn't feel well. I said, how are you doing? He says, I'm not doing good. I'm not eating well. I'm not doing well. I'm feeling terrible. So I walked with him down the driveway and talked to him a little bit, and I gave him some protein drink because I said, it helps me. He loves it. He's going to get some. He even called me here at the beginning of the service to ask a question about something he wants his daughter to buy that I have, and he appreciates that example. It's interesting, as I talked to him yesterday there in the driveway, he got kind of emotional at the end. And those same kind of emotions that I had felt, he was feeling. And it gave me the opportunity just to put my hand on his shoulder and encourage him a little bit. And he said to me later, he says, you're a very special friend. I think God gives us all opportunities to play share, and they're everywhere. It's really a matter of being attentive to what he shows us. In the mornings, I've learned I can sit out on my patio, and it's kind of private, and I have coffee with God. And I've had all these mornings to do that. And now I realize I can still do that and go back to work. I might have to spend a little less time or start a little earlier, but I can still do that. And as I sit there, the people in the other building get in their cars and they drive out and go to work. I can be praying for them as they go by. There's just an opportunity right there. So interesting. I think all this comes down to it's just the common, normal, daily, everyday things that make the difference. And when I think about it, I realize God is in the details. Why is place sharing so important? Why is this such a big deal? Well, on September 20th, in My Utmost for His Highest, one of my favorite little devotionals, it's written here, Matthew 5:48, be perfect, just as your Father in heaven is perfect. What? Be like the Father? Can't I just, be like Jillian or somebody? Maybe I could be like Burmy. No, I want to be a saint. I'll be like Burmy's wife. Right? No, he says, be perfect as your Father is perfect. Our Lord's exhortation to us is to be generous in our behavior toward everyone. It says, in other words, simply show to the other person what God has shown to you. It says, being a disciple means deliberately identifying yourself with God's interests in other people. As that new commandment says, to love one another. The true expression of Christian character is not in good doing, but in God-likeness. If the Spirit of God has transformed you within, you will exhibit divine characteristics in your life. Not as God's life, not as human life. It is as God's life, not as human life trying to be godly. We don't want to be humans trying to be godly. We want God to live in us and through us. The secret of a Christian's life is that the supernatural becomes natural to him as a result of the grace of God, and the experience of this becomes evident in the practical, everyday details of life. Those everyday little things. Helping somebody, sharing with somebody, praying for somebody. I think we have this opportunity to learn to be perfect, and that Jesus came to tell us that. Jesus, the ultimate place sharer, in every day and in everything. I started off by saying thank you to all of you because your prayers and your attention and your concern are so much appreciated. But I also want to finish by saying thank you to the most generous God who is so committed. We think we're committed to something. He is totally committed. He's totally in. He's not letting up. He's not going back. Wow. Not for those people that I just finished reading about in Malachi and the Old Testament. He never gave up. He's never going to give up on any of us. It's up to us to simply listen to him and let him please share with us and to be like him as we share and give to others. Thank you for the opportunity to share that.